Aaron, thank you so much today for taking out the time to jump on with me. First, before we get into it, can you tell us a little bit about you and a little backstory?
Yeah, you bet. So, my name is Aaron West. I live in Modesto, California, or actually right outside of Modesto, but my business is based out of Modesto. I got into real estate in 2005. I had a pretty successful career in retail in the jewelry industry. And just like a lot of people who get into real estate, was uh, tempted by the unlimited income and pick your own hours. And so I quit a successful career cold turkey with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and had two easy sales. And then the market totally turned and started really built my market through the Great Recession. And it didn't ever do the bank owned homes or any of that, just really tried to create a fundamentally sound real estate business for myself, based on relationships, based on activity and hustle, and tried not to really take any shortcuts to my own. I think I was my own worst enemy sometimes because I was so focused on doing things the right way. So the market started to turn. I started buying real estate in 2011 at pretty close to the bottom of the market, and have really tried to continue that journey of at least buying one or two properties a year ever since then. I'm in escrow on a property right now. Started building my team in 2017. In 2016, I think I did like 72 buyers, and I just didn't ever want to work that hard again for the rest of my life. And so I brought on a couple of agents. Both of them are still with me to this day. So they both have been with me over 7 years, and started building truly a business. And it's really important, I think, that for a lot of us, as we get into real estate as investors or real estate agents or teams or whatever it is, that you be really intentional about starting with the end in mind. And once I became intentional about that, then things really started to change and momentum started to pick up, and we rode the momentum of the market as well. But we have 6 agents right now. I'm interviewing 2 more agents to add to the team. I've got a staff of 3 full-time people in the office, 3 virtual assistants. We closed 181 transactions last year, and we're the 10th the 10th best small team, I guess, in the state of California.
Okay, awesome. That's there's a lot to unpack there.
There's a lot to
But
unpack
I
there.
wanted you to give me the full boat so we could really take, account of what you've done over the years, especially having your license. I didn't know you got it in 2005, and I didn't also know that you were basically, working in the jewelry industry. Did you own your own shop, or did?
No, I think that was one of the reasons why real estate appealed to me, is that I was with the same jewelry company for 10 years and had built a really good database of clients who literally would wait for me for hours at Christmas time. It upset all the other agents, but I was really intentional about, doing the right things, creating relationships for them. And I just came to the realization one day that with all the success that I had achieved in the jewelry industry, it was never going to be my business. It was always going to be the jewelry store that was reaping the benefits of all of my hard work. My father-in-law has been in real estate since the 80s, and I'll never forget him saying this to me. He said, "Aaron, I wouldn't wish real estate on my worst enemy, but you should be doing real estate." And literally with that conversation with him, I got my license, gave my 2-week notice, and went from making, in 2005, I was making $125,000 a year to a big fat zero, and just had no choice but to be successful.
Well, that answers the question on why you switched, because 10 years is not, anything to knock down, because you spend 10 years as a real estate agent and you build a solid book of business, right? Or selling cars, and, as long as you're keeping that CRM up and keeping the relationships up. So it gives me some context of why you switched, and I agree with you. As you switch from doing sales for someone for now yourself, you took one skill set that you were doing there and then moved it over to real estate. And now you can own essentially your own company and be able to develop the same relationships and or different ones through the same skills and get to the next level that's higher up and do it all for yourself.
And, and that is exactly right. A lot of my clients from the real estate industry transferred over to, I mean, from the jewelry industry, transferred over to real estate. And I knew that was the case because I had proven to them that I was looking out for their best interests. And so I knew that it was just a matter of time and consistency and contact for those that didn't have a relationship with a realtor to come over and recreate that relationship with me in a different industry from the relationship that I had built with them from before.
Was there anything for you outside of the skill sets of selling that you took to take over that was almost parallel for?
Oh, I think that the secret to real estate that people just try to avoid is that it is a contact sport. It is a face-to-face, a belly-to-belly, voice-to-voice, truly at its core, because there's so much emotion involved in buying real estate. And so the things that transferred from real estate or from the jewelry industry to real estate is that I'd had so many conversations with so many different people, those skills of being able to recognize a personality type, a personality style, a conversation style, and being able to understand who those people were really so important to the trajectory of my success. And now I'm in the process of trying to transfer those skills to the agents that are on my team so that their learning curve is a lot shorter than the average real estate agent's is.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the two agents that you basically got on your team in 2017 that are still today with you, you could probably attest that you've been able to build their skills up and build from.
They are rock stars.
Yeah.
They are absolute rock stars.
Yeah, really. I mean, especially coming from someone like yourself, where you have experience of skills, in one industry, moved over to the next, and then built those through a very, very hard time economically, especially where it didn't just focus on, maybe an ancillary part of real estate. It was the main focus of where the downturn was real estate. And then transform those skills into two people, not only two, six and more, is huge, right? But going back to when you started, you had two little kids, you're married, had a family. You had to go from making a good amount of money to zero and then back to that same amount and then some. What were some trials and tribulations that you experienced through making sure that you were able to get through those hard times and be successful?
That's a great question. I haven't told this story in a while. When before I had gotten into real estate in 2004, we had bought our dream house. It was 2,800 square feet, single story, third of an acre, pool. I mean, RV parking literally a block away from the school that we wanted them to go, at the very end of a court. It was where we envisioned ourselves being until we died. I mean, it was the end all house for us at the time. And in 2007, so 2 years into real estate, I had been able to make that hit every single month.
Mm-hmm.
But I also saw the trajectory of the market and knew that for me to be able to build my business and to really build success and significance from where I was, there were some things that had to change. And so my wife and I, and it took us truthfully a couple of months and a whole lot of wine of having conversations about what we needed to do to get ourselves emotionally to the point where we were willing to sell that house. And I mean, it sold immediately, but we sold our house for $525,000 and I got a check for $1,250. That's how close we were to being one of the statistics of short sales, foreclosures. And the thing that was so magical about that and doing that is that it helped me understand what my clients were going through that whole period. I mean, we avoided foreclosure, and short sale, but 3 weeks later, my home would have been underwater. So during that time period when we were going through the foreclosures, going through the short sales, dealing with all of these clients, I had an empathy for them because I'd experienced a lot of what they had experienced, and then was able to translate that into how do you build success from these times and these things. And so it allowed me to build a business. It freed us up from a huge monthly nut that gave us the ability to keep my assistant and just truly focus on the business and building it. So it's one of the things that made me a business person, because I was able to separate the emotion from having to make a business decision. And that's just made everything a lot easier as I've built my career and the business from there.
That's huge. I mean, for one, you're taking it to a personal account of what you experienced, and that brings even more transparency and being authentic with your clients on them experiencing that too, especially at that time, right? So you're able to talk to them about the trials and tribulations you had, and also come from, a place that you experienced the same thing. And that's lucky that you guys were able to get out of that at that time and still, be a little bit positive. I was curious about you not going after foreclosure accounts and short sales, and you just did normal transactions through, the downfall. And most people that you talk to said like, well, I at least had one account for, short sales or REOs. And the reason they do that is because that was consistent business for the, couple years to try to get that plane up and get some altitude during the hard times. Why
and I did short sales because I was actually helping a client. So the client was there, and there was intentionality to not doing the REO business. And as soon as the REOs, the bank-owned foreclosure homes, started to show up with some kind of consistency, and in hindsight, I would do that now because I have the business acumen to be able to actually separate myself from everything and create that leverage. And at the time, I just didn't. It was just me and one assistant.
Mm-hmm.
And what I saw was the majority of those agents had one client, and that was the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an all-consuming client who took all of their time. They were compensated well for it, but they were asked so much as to be that person for the bank. And I knew that this was a season. And when the market shifted and normal homes started to happen again, if I had a database of 300 or 400 people that I had helped buy through this market, when the sell market came, I was going to be the person that they called because I was the one that slogged it out and stayed in touch with them. So again, it's that building with the end in mind, to where there's only one agent that I know in our whole market that's in business still that was an REO agent. Every single other one of them is gone. And I wanted to be around for a long time. And so I made that conscious decision, and it was a lot of hard work, but I've experienced so much more success than any of those agents for a much, much more extended period of time, because I wasn't looking at the instant gratification of just survival today.
That's a very valid point that I honestly didn't think about. I guess I'm more so just thinking that the business, you're trying to save as much as possible in the sense of getting a transaction, especially through the hard time in the trenches. But you bring up a really good point where you want to build relationships for a lifetime, and you're not going to build them through the bank. I've heard stories where there's a guy local here in Orange County that did like 16 million in REO sales in like one of those years, 2011 or something. And then his business went to zero after, everything started going back up. So you bring a valid point, because the relationships that you built over time, you continue to follow up with those people, you talk to those people, are going to come back and continue to come back. And if you build that as deep as possible and be authentic, you're going to be able to go so much farther in your career, like you just talked about.
It's the foundation of really every successful business that's any kind of service industry business is relationships. And I think it's a thing that a lot of agents and people have missed for the past 4 or 5 years, is that real estate has been so easy. And my real estate coach had this conversation with me a week ago, where she said, Aaron, for the last 5 years, there's been no difference between you and an agent who's been in the market for a month, because the only thing that mattered was who had the strongest buyer, who
Yeah.
had the buyer that had the most money to come to the table that could go over list price the most. And we're transitioning to a market now where that will never happen again for at least the foreseeable future that we can see. It will happen again at some point, but and now it's really important. And again, it's the same thing as why my business is going to be continue to be successful, because even though we were riding that wave of euphoria and tailwinds that everybody else has been doing, we made sure that we kept our foundation, and we keep our foundation strong. And that's this whole database of people that have been part of our business for years. And so I'm actually super optimistic about the next 2 years to 3 years. I think they are, for professionals, people who are willing to work and improve their skills, there's so much opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I can hear it in your voice and also see, how you've been able to continue to be successful over the years and build up off that foundation. What, going forward, kind of talking about the market, what are you implementing now that you weren't 3 to 6 months ago?
Discipline and intentionality.
Okay, all right. No discipline back then. Okay, all right. So
The reality is that every single agent in this market, good, bad, new, old, we were all able to just spread our wings, and the wind took us, and prices continued to rise. Transactions were going crazy. Everything was there. And even myself and my business, there are so many places for improvement still in my business, because I allowed the wind to carry me instead of my oar in the water. And we still had the oar in the water, but I think what we're focusing on right now is, skills, negotiating skills, people skills. At this point, 70% of the agents in real estate have never experienced a normal market. That's 70%. Let that sink in for just a second. So that means 70% of the agents have never needed to learn how to negotiate. 70% of the agents have never needed to learn the skills of being able to help their client navigate through a challenging time, both emotionally and the external market that's being pushed on them. 80% of lenders have never experienced it. And so what we're really focusing on right now are those skills, because those skills, and it doesn't matter if you're an investor, you've never had to have the skills to navigate a market. If you're a solo agent, if you're a team leader, none of these skills have been needed. And now they are. And the faster that we adapt to this market and really knuckle down and get an inch wide and a mile deep, the sooner and faster that we will be the successful in this market. Because it's going to get tough. I mean, we've got six months to a year of not a crash in prices. So, I think they say a bear market is a 20% decline in, whatever. And we're not going to have a bear market in values, but we are for sure going to have a bear market when it comes to number of transactions. So there's going to be a lot less pieces of the pie to go after, with a whole lot of agents who don't have skills trying to get a piece of it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what I see is, at least with my shorter experience than yours, is a lot of agents aren't willing to negotiate with the seller, because now it's a negotiation with the seller on a price reduction or concessions from the offer that comes in to a lower offer, to, other items that come in on the offer, that terms you haven't seen in the last 5 years. So now that's in play, and people feel uncomfortable when that comes up. So I see that.
And the thing is too, is that now it's your job to be able to give the tools to the other side for them to be able to have that conversation with your seller. Because if you have those skills and they don't, you're playing a game that they don't even know is happening.
Yeah.
And if you understand that and you've put the work into it, then you're able to say, here's where my client is, here's why. Here's what you can tell your client so that they understand where my client is coming from, to give that seller a reason to give those concessions. Because if they just come and say, here's the offer, the seller's going to go, F you. But if you give them a reason, everybody wants to negotiate if they have a reason to negotiate. And so I think that that's the magic that can happen, is that as we improve our skills, part of our job is now giving the other agent the skills or the dialogues to be able to help them be successful so that we can make this all happen.
Yeah, very good point too, with coaching the other agent on the other side for sure, and walking them through, because they may still be new, and they may, or at least not experience the changing market. So you have to walk them through that conversation just so you can actually get that offer to land and make the transaction work for both sides. And be able to smooth over any type of conversation that's going to come up between them and the seller. So valid point, walking them through that. For with you and your team, are there some principles or success tips that you've been able to implement with them to be able to excel them, especially coming into a different market?
Yeah, I think that the most important thing as an agent coming into a different market, and I liken, to the Navy SEALs, right? The Navy SEALs, they are the cream of the crop. They are the professionals. They train every single day. But if they're going into a new battle or a new area or a different kind of combat mission, they immediately go into what are the skills that we need to be successful in that combat mission.
Mm-hmm.
And they totally change all of their training, but they train and they practice and they drill and they put themselves in that scenario as many times as they can, so that when it happens in real life, they have the skills and it becomes more of an automatic than something that they have to think about and train. And real estate agents in general, very few ever practice any of the skills. They go to a listing appointment and it's the first time they've given a listing appointment every single time, because they've never taken the time to refine or listen or do role play or practice scripts. And so for our team, a good portion of our time every week, we have at least 4 trainings a week on skills. And then every agent on our team writes at least one offer to our listing agent every week, and they negotiate back and forth so that they're writing 52 offers a year.
Okay.
And they're training, and then everybody's giving feedback, and then we're having dialogues about what it is. Every single offer that gets written, I get a copy of the offer so I can see what's going on and see if I can give them perspective. When any counteroffer comes through, nobody is allowed to respond verbally to a counteroffer with another agent until they've had at least one conversation with another team member, explaining what's going on, talking about what they want to do or what they think should be done, so that they can get perspective from the other agent of whatever it happens to be. Every single agent on my team has a different personality. So every single one of them has a different way that they would approach it or what they naturally would go to approach it. And by having that perspective and that outside influence on them, they're now much better and able to adapt to what each scenario is. So I think it's just, if you want to become a good hitter, you got to go to the batting cage and look at a lot of balls before you become a good hitter. If you want to become a really good real estate agent, you have to practice your scripts, and then you have to be super intentional about getting body to body and voice to voice with every single person that you possibly can, because the days of having 3 leads and closing 2 of them are over. We're going to a place where you've got to have 15 leads to close 2 of them. So you have to be much more intentional about everything that you do.
Yeah. I like the system and the structure that you have set up, especially with the counters and being able to bounce things off. Because even if you minimize a counter and think that it's only a price or something like that, you may be able to articulate something to the other agent that you didn't even think about, and you got a tip from an agent in your office. So That's huge. I've never even thought about that. So I wrote that down and took a note on that because that's cool. And then also one offer a week as well, because, they're writing so many offers. That gives them context, and also, it gives them the ability to now know the offer front and back. So if someone calls them out on some small little, piece of the offer, even though it's, case hardened over the years and attorneys have already written it out, there's still things that, every day, hey, this wasn't the time, this wasn't, you didn't send it on time, or, it's not time stamped, or it's not initialed here. So that's super crucial as well.
And I think also with negotiating, there's 3 steps to every negotiation. The first is you set your anchor points, and if you're the buyer's agent, it's what are we going to offer, or what would you like to offer, and then you have to gather information, and then you actually present the offer and start the negotiation. And when you get the counter offer, that starts all over again. So every time you get a new piece of information, you have to go back and reassess where you are at. And so understanding the rhythm of negotiating is one of the reasons why we write an offer every single week, is so that they get really good at asking the right questions of the agent. My listing agent will play different personality types. So sometimes he'll talk slow and be like, all about family, and we need to do this together, and collaboration and win-win. And then sometimes he's a hard ass that's like, I'm not giving you anything, just write your deal and get it in front of me. And having them be able to have the skills to be able to play that game a bunch, it's such a leg up, I believe, on the rest of the market that's out there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, going over all that stuff and being able to have that in your back pocket is going to make you that much more successful, 100%. With you and buying real estate as you were an agent and being able to, why did you do that? Because if you speak to, 50 agents, maybe 1 or 2 are buying real estate on the side. And why was that so big to you? And granted, I mean, I know you more personally, but why was that big to you, and why did you start doing that?
Because I was really good at spending money. I mean, really, my problem was my whole life is that I out earned my spending, and I was worth exactly the same when I left the jewelry store making $125,000 a year as I was when they started me at $13,000 a year 10 years before, and I had gotten a raise every 6 months for 10 years. And I was just as broke. So when I got into real estate and started to experience some success with the number of transactions, 07, 08, 09, 10, I realized that I had an issue with money. And unless I figured out what that issue was and how to start addressing it and creating a good relationship with money, I was never going to be able to build wealth. And I had one of my mentors, I asked him, I said, Brian, why can't I keep money? And he said, what's your dad's relationship with money? And it was the first time anybody had had a conversation with me that resonated with me, or with any kind of intentionality of how many things we just simply recreate of our parents because it's just normal. My dad's broke. He's still renting a house. And, now it's from my brother and I, because we bought a house and he rents it from us. But that was his relationship with money. There's always a place for money to go. So what I did is I started a stewardship relationship with money. I created a savings account that I called Not My Money. I put something out of every single check into that. I made the commitment that I would not make my house payment before I would touch that money. So it wasn't a savings account. It was not my money. It was for Aaron, who I wanted to be and who I had the potential to be. So my first house was simply done because there was enough money in there. I wanted to spend it, and I knew if it stayed in there any longer, I was going to find a place to spend it. And so I just actively started looking. I found a property and bought my first property. And at the time, people talk about wanting to get rich quick. And Gary Vaynerchuk says, people want to get rich quick, but life is long. And another one of my mentors gave me the one of the best pieces of advice that I've got about building wealth, and that's always just hit base hits, Aaron. Just hit base hits. So in 2011, my first property was $46,000. It was a duplex for $46,000. I had to come up with $8,000, and that was every penny that I had was $8,000 because that's all there was in that Not My Money account, and that was a base hit for me. I'm actually getting ready to put that house on the market right now today to buy another property for $380,000. So it's almost, it's like an 8x.
Yeah.
Time was my friend.
Yeah.
It wasn't that I did anything smart or genius.
Yeah.
It was that I hit a base hit today that over time turned into a triple.
Yeah.
And so once I bought that first property, my next one was 65, my next one was 78, the next one was 110. And every year the price would go up of the properties as the market went up. But once I'd made that commitment that I was now building wealth for the potential that Aaron has, even to this day, I'm on a salary for my business. We don't lead extravagant lives. I get paid a salary on the first of every month. I get a paycheck. My wife gets a paycheck. We live on that. Anything extra that comes in is going to the person that I have to be. So we're investing all of that so that we can have the life we want when we want.
That's huge. Yeah. I mean, putting, I guess, a lot of, mental, capacity on those things that we don't think about, and starting to, reframe what maybe you have, different thoughts about that you really never thought about. For instance, your dad's relationship with money, can really transform in anything. It could be relationships with partners. It could be relationships with, business partners. It could be relationships with friends, of what you really got from your parents. And that's why, maybe it's a little bit more rocky in that certain area than, you ever thought about. So being able to sit down and do that is very, for one, humbling, and, honestly, very vulnerable too. So I'm glad you were able to share that.
I love the movie Inside Out, and I don't know if you've watched that or not, but the premise of the movie, it's a cartoon, and every single thing that happens to you is this little marble that gets deposited into your library of your brain. Yeah. And there are these core memories that shape your life, and then there's millions of memories or millions of marbles that go into this library that get pulled out at different times or influence you in a certain way at different times. And the reason that I love that movie is that when you go and you pull those marbles out and you pull those memories out, there's so many memories that we remember a certain way, but if you actually dive into it, they came from a totally different place, and someone else remembers that exact same thing a different way. And when you start looking at the things that you repeatedly do over and over and over again, if it's overeat, if it's not exercise, if it's manic behavior, if it's OCD, a lot of times those come from some place in our past that once you address those and see and recognize what they are and are able to talk about them, you now have the ability to make the changes.
For sure. 100%. Yeah. And I think that, taking, evaluating your life and evaluating the relationships that you had before and the ones that you currently have, just like you did, provides you more context to where you are, that, currently in your life. So it would at least give you some backing to say, okay, well, I got to change some things here and there. And, it takes a big person to do that. So you were able to do that. And now, I don't know how many properties or units you have now, but you have significantly more because you were able to, look outside yourself and realize, okay, well, there are things that are holding me back and putting me into a different bracket financially and relationally with other people too. So for you, outside of having those, those trials and tribulations going for getting properties and everything else, as you started buying properties, was it just, one after the other? And did you only use your money, or did you start using partnerships too to build wealth?
Partnerships didn't happen until the last year. So for me, it was, and again, in hindsight, I'm always the biggest stopgap to my wealth, my business, my personal life,
Yeah.
everything. It all starts with me not having perspective, and I've been able to build wealth because I'm really fortunate to have found a tribe of people, GoBundance, that have helped me with perspective so that I can get out of my own way. And so up until this last year, everything that we've done have been by ourselves. And, last year I had a partnership. We did a partnership on a big commercial building and a multifamily, and moving forward, there will be many more, and a single family STR that we bought in Scottsdale. So I now understand that as long as you're dealing with people you want to do life with, then partnerships are an amazing thing that everybody wins.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And they can make you look at things that are, completely out of your comfort zone and push you outside your comfort zone where you can expand, your abilities, skills, and also knowledge to make you more successful, more net worth, and a, more well-rounded person. So that's huge too. And so when you were buying those properties, just to stick on that, because I think a lot of people just continued kind of like what you did in that first career, just to level up in the sense of getting pay raises each 6 months. Well, once you started investing, what type of changes did you make personally and professionally as you would, continue to buy one and buy two and buy three?
I became more disciplined and intentional about what my goals were. And when you have clarity with your goals, the other decisions become much easier. So we didn't have furniture in our front room when we bought our house for almost 2 years because we had made the commitment that we wouldn't do that until X was reached. And so we were disciplined about doing the things that we needed to do until we got that. So I think that it is when you become clear with your goals, your decisions become easy. Mm-hmm. And as we gathered momentum on building wealth, and as we gathered momentum on our journey towards significance and freedom and all of those things, it became easier to become intentional, and it became easier to separate myself from that money so that I was able to put more and more and more money away because you are feeling that momentum. Mm-hmm. Now, bringing it back to today and the market that we're in today, I believe there's going to be more opportunities in the next 2 years to build long-term wealth than there have been in the last 8. Yeah. And so we're becoming really intentional now and making sure that we're, as a business, really lean, as a family, really lean, because it's going to be tough. Like I said, I think it's going to be really tough for the next 6 months to a year, but wealth is built in a recession and collected in times of plenty. It's like those properties that I bought in 2011 and 12 and 13. I'm now collecting that wealth that was built in those years. And that's the opportunity that I see for people who are disciplined and that want to learn more and that want to get perspective and that become really focused on what they want to achieve. There's going to be some amazing opportunities in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, speaking of opportunities, there's going to be opportunities in active income, to build your skills and be way better, especially any type of sales that you're doing. You're selling cars or real estate or jewelry. And then also on the investing side, as soon as you get that active income, move that into a position to utilize it for passive income. And it may take you 6 months or a year, but there's still, I believe, just like what you said, there's going to be opportunities because now people may be tighter because inflation, and they may have to let a property go that they don't want to at a specific price that really didn't favor them, but it's going to favor you on the purchase.
Yeah, I think there's going to be opportunities in a lot of different areas, and I just want to be open and prepared for those opportunities. So we're becoming intentional in the business. We're becoming more disciplined in the business, and the same is true of us financially. We're becoming more disciplined because we did like everybody, you get carried away when the waves are rushing and the water just keeps flooding in. After a while, you're just like, I'm going to float for a long time. And now that we see what's going to happen, it's like, oh, I think it was Warren Buffett that said, you don't know who's swimming naked until the tide recedes. And so I think the tide's going to recede and there's going to be some pain, and, we'll see who's swimming naked. And I hope it's not me.
Yeah. I hope it's not me. I agree. Well, before we get you out of here, I'll ask you some final questions and we'll get you out of here. And I appreciate your time. One is there a book that you've read over the course of your career or the past couple of years that you really helped your trajectory to become more successful?
Yes. So I'll give two that everybody talks about, and then one that a lot of people haven't heard about that was really influential for me. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Richest Man in Babylon are the two staples of every single wealthy investor that I know. If you haven't read those books, those are the two books that will change your life more than any other book if you actually just do what they tell you to do. The third is, I actually have it here in my office. The third book that has been the most influential to me is by T. Harv Eker. It's called The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. It was written in the 80s. I mean, if you look at his picture here, it is, he's wearing a double-breasted, big, huge suit with pleats. But he talks about how wealthy people look at money versus how the average person looks at money, and how coming from a place of abundance equals receiving of abundance. And I read it for the first time in 2013 as I was just kind of starting my journey. And then we reread it as a team last year. And it's amazing, as my wealth journey has built, how accurate this book is when it talks about the universe and coming from a place of abundance, and how wealthy people look at money and the decisions that they make and how they make those decisions. As we've been associated with more people that are like that, it's spot on.
Nice. Okay. I think I had that book. I never picked it up and read it because I got entrenched in so many different other books, but I'll read that one for sure. And then for business wise, is there a online resource or an app that you use on a daily to weekly basis that helps you guys more, integrate your systems?
For us, and it's for our team. So our contact management system we use is Brivity and then Sisu. So those are the two systems that we have in place for accountability, tracking, contact, database management, all of those things. That kind of handles all of those. I think there's a lot of really great ones out there. Those are the ones that we settled on that we're really happy with.
Nice. Okay, cool. And where can people find out more about you?
If you look right below, right here, Instagram, you can go to theaaron.west is where probably the easiest thing, or you can shoot me an email. It's the West Experience Real Estate Group in Modesto, California. And by the way, I would not be a good businessman if I didn't reach out to your people and say, if you hear of anybody thinking about buying or selling real estate in the Central Valley, we would love the opportunity to make you look like a hero. So reach out to us at the West Experience.
Cool, man. I really appreciate it. I'll put all your contact information in the show notes, and then I'll put some notes in there too that we went over. I think that this is a good episode for people that are, seeing the market change, and then also people that are maybe just getting into real estate and need some more inspiration, because you've been, an inspiration on where I followed you from afar, and then also where you've been able to show us and talk about your journey through the hard times and to get through, the next 2 years, which is going to be a little bit more hard than the last 5, like you said. So I appreciate your time.
Well, I appreciate your time too, Peter. It's been nice chatting with you again. I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Aaron.